On Kisses and Hugs Club today for singles and couples. Episode 61. From Neglect to a Vicious Life. Sade's untold story. In the heart of Yoruba land lay the bustling city of Lagos. Life in Lagos was a blend of vibrant market scenes, the rhythmic sounds of traditional drums, and the soft, comforting murmur of the bar beach. It was here that Sade's story unfolded, marked by sorrow, rebellion, and eventual redemption. Sade, a delicate girl with eyes that held the depth of unspoken sorrows, often found herself lost in the shadows of her parents' ambitions. Her small frame seemed to shrink even further in the vast emptiness of their modest home, where laughter and warmth were as scarce as water in the dry season. Her father, Mr. Williams, was a transporter whose life was measured in miles rather than moments. His weathered hands gripped the steering wheel of his battered truck from dawn to dusk, navigating treacherous roads that snaked between distant cities. The constant rumble of the engine had become more familiar to him than the sound of his daughter's voice. When he did return home, his eyes were heavy with exhaustion, barely registering Sade's eager face before he collapsed into a dreamless sleep. Mrs. Williams, a petty trader at the bustling local market, lived in a cacophony of bartering and gossip. Her days were a blur of haggling over yams, peppers, and second-hand clothes, her shrill voice rising above the din as she fought for every kobo. The market had become her world, its rhythms dictating her life more surely than the rising and setting of the sun. In the rare moments when she thought of home, it was with a mixture of guilt and justification. Surely her hard work would pay off someday, giving Sade the life she deserved. Their relentless pursuit of a better life had become an all-consuming obsession, leaving no room for the present, no time for the small joys of family life. Sade had become an afterthought, a vague future beneficiary of their sacrifices rather than a living, breathing child in need of love and attention. In their absence, Sade was left in the care of her older cousins, a decision made more out of necessity than consideration. These cousins, themselves products of neglect and hardship, saw Sade not as a child to nurture but as a burden to bear. Their resentment manifested in subtle cruelties. A sharp word here, a missed meal there, and sometimes in the dark of night, far worse transgressions that Sade dared not speak of. As days bled into weeks and months, Sade's world shrank to the confines of her loneliness. She learned to move silently through the house, to make herself invisible, to swallow her tears and longings. Her eyes, once bright with childish wonder, grew deep and sorrowful, holding secrets too heavy for her young heart to bear. In the rare moments when her parents were home, Sade would watch them from afar, a stranger in her own family, yearning for a connection that seemed forever out of reach. The shadows of Lagos's lush forests paled in comparison to the darkness that engulfed Sade's young life. Her cousins, entrusted with her care, became the architects of her nightmares. Sade, the eldest at 17, led the pack with a malevolent glint in his eyes. His sister, Fumi, 2 years his junior, was no less cruel, her soft voice a deceptive mask for her sadistic nature. The youngest, 14-year-old Bode, followed his siblings' lead, eager to prove his own capacity for cruelty. Their abuse began subtly, a pinch here, a harsh word there, but quickly escalated into a reign of terror. In the dead of night, when the city was cloaked in darkness, they would creep into Sade's room. Ade's calloused hands would clamp over her mouth, muffling her screams as Fumi and Bode took turns inflicting their twisted desires upon her small, fragile body. "If you breathe a word of this to anyone," Sade would hiss, his breath hot against her ear, "we'll throw you into the bar beach. The water spirits will drag you down, and no one will ever find your body." The weight of this secret crushed Sade's spirit. At 5 years old, she bore a burden that would break even the strongest adult. Her once melodious laughter, which had rung through the compound like little bells, fell silent. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed, replaced by a haunted, faraway look. Joy became a foreign concept, fear her constant companion. At school, the change in Sade was stark. Mrs. Adeyemi, her kindergarten teacher, watched with growing concern as the once vibrant child withdrew into herself. Sade's colorful drawings of smiling families were replaced by dark scribbles and torn pages. During playtime, she would huddle in a corner, flinching at the slightest touch from her classmates. "There's something wrong with Sade," Mrs. Adeyemi confided to the headmaster. "I've tried talking to her, but she just stares at the floor. I fear something terrible is happening at home." The headmaster nodded gravely. "We must inform her parents. This behavior is not normal for a child her age." But their concerns fell on deaf ears. When confronted, Mr. Williams waved off their worries with a tired hand. "Children go through phases," he said dismissively. "We're working hard to give her a good life. She'll be fine." Mrs. Williams, her mind preoccupied with the day's sales, barely registered the teacher's words. "Sade has always been a quiet child," she insisted. "You're making something out of nothing." As her parents remained blind to her suffering, Sade retreated further into her shell. Each day became a battle for survival, each night a descent into terror. The carefree child she once was vanished, replaced by a hollow-eyed ghost who moved through life in fearful silence, carrying the weight of unspeakable horrors on her tiny shoulders. Years passed, and Sade's resentment towards her parents grew. By the time she entered the higher institution, she was a wild dog let loose, seeking to punish her parents through her own destruction. She dove headfirst into a life of hedonism, clubbing, smoking, and engaging in all manner of reckless behavior. She spat on the name of God, despising everything he represented. Invitations to school fellowship were met with disdain. Her heart hardened with each passing day. On campus, Sade joined a notorious cult known as the Jezebels. Their reign of terror was unmatched. They caused chaos and instilled fear among students and faculty alike. Sade's transformation into a force of rebellion was complete. Her roommate Angela was a stark contrast. Angela was a devout Christian, her faith unwavering. She prayed fervently for Sade, often with her fellowship friends, despite Sade's antagonistic behavior. Their coexistence was tense, and it reached a boiling point when Sade decided to exact her revenge on Angela. In a fit of rage, Sade conspired with her boyfriends to ambush Angela. One evening, as Angela walked back from lectures, singing worship songs and praying, the boys moved in to attack. But something inexplicable happened. As they closed in, they saw Angela moving, but her legs had vanished. Fear gripped them and they fled, convinced she was a witch. Terrified, Sade plotted another way to rid herself of Angela. She laced some meat pies with rat poison and offered them to Angela. Angela accepted the food and ate it without hesitation. When nothing happened to her, Sade was shaken to her core. Angela then showed her the scripture that spoke of divine protection. "If they drink any deadly thing, it will not hurt them." Sade's walls of anger and rebellion crumbled. She broke down and confessed her sins to Angela, who listened with compassion. Through Angela's guidance, Sade discovered the love and mercy of Christ. It was a long journey, but step by step, she found healing and forgiveness. Years later, Sade returned to Lagos, not as a wild rebel, but as a beacon of hope. She reconciled with her parents, who were filled with regret and sorrow for their neglect. The city that once witnessed her suffering now saw her as a testament to the transformative power of faith and redemption. Sade's story became an inspiration, a reminder that even in the darkest times, light can find a way through. Lessons learned. 1. Parental neglect can lead to emotional and psychological damage. When parents fail to provide the necessary love, attention, and protection, children can suffer deep, lasting wounds. 2. Neglect often leaves children vulnerable to abuse, as seen with Sade, who suffered at the hands of her cousins. 3. Sade's neglected state led to a noticeable decline in her academic performance and social behavior. Parents should be sensitive to such declines. 4. Sade's attempt to punish her parents by engaging in destructive behaviors only led to further harm to herself. Never try to punish people with your actions. 5. Her involvement with the Jezebels and her subsequent actions demonstrate how one bad decision can lead to another, creating a downward spiral that is hard to escape. Watch your company. 6. Despite Sade's rebelliousness and the wrongs she committed, God's love remained steadfast. 7. Angela's faith and persistent prayers for Sade under the importance of intercessory prayer, and the belief that God can change even the hardest hearts. Keep praying. This story is written by your favorite relationship and marriage counselor and therapist, Pastor Dunamis Okunowo. Don't keep this life-changing story to yourself. Share it with your friends, family, and social networks.
Do you want more? Read the full blog by clicking on the link in bio or description to navigate to the devotionals, or go to www.khcpartners.org. Watch full video on youtube.com/@PastorDunamis. For one-on-one therapy, counseling, or an intervention in your marriage or relationship, go to bit.ly/therapy needed. To get courses for singles and couples, go to bit.ly/course. To partner with us, go to www.khcpartners.org/give.